So they found out that everybody inside the ship had their own room, and that the room had an area that was terraformed to appear like it's the outside. So you actually had grass, you had land, you had fruit trees, and then they had this artificial kind of holodeck thing that made it look like you were outdoors. So talk about AAA accommodations, 5-star, 7-star hotel inside this mothership. So that was very cool, and he also was at a base down there, which he gave it kind of his own name based on the movie Ice Station Zebra. That's not really what it was called. There is a pro word for Antarctica, which I'm not going to share, because that's still one way that we can tell who really knows who's actually been there, There is the pro word is something that you talk about where it sounds like a normal thing, but then people on the inside are like, oh, you're talking about that. And one pro word that we have talked about is the plan. And the plan was something drawn up in the 1950s to defeat this cabal / Illuminati / deep state group that was so malevolent and destructive. So the Antarctica stories alone are quite fascinating, and I do have another insider that Pete introduced me to who also has been there and has experienced many of the same things. We heard about Antarctica from William Tompkins. We heard about it from Emery Smith. We've heard about it from Corey Good. I heard about it from people who don't want to talk, like Bruce and Jacob. We heard about it from our old Montauk insider, Daniel. That's going now back to 2003 that I first started to talk to him, I believe. 2004 was what it was. So anyway, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and Pete Peterson brought us so much wonderful information, so many things that were so fascinating, because there has always been a war on the inside about whether to tell us the truth or not. Anybody who thinks that the government could never keep a secret, they can't even hide a file in a filing cabinet, would be wise to remember that in the case of the development of the nuclear bomb with the Manhattan Project, you had 140,000 employees. I believe it was 120 or 140,000, some number like that. Depends on which source you read. Let's say 140,000. 140,000 people working on the development of the nuclear bomb, so compartmentalized that until it exploded over Hiroshima, nobody knew we had it. They had it in multiple locations at multiple military bases, and they had signs up there that said, things like, what you do here, what you see here, what you say here, let it stay here. And it's like the hypnotic thing where it tells you in a rhyme, so it gets into your subconscious. Pete talked about working at the CIA and having mind-controlled shooters, lone gunmen, who were not the ones that it got pinned on necessarily, but they didn't remember doing the operation. And they would come back into the office and look at the television and see that there was this shooting tragedy that happened, and they would actually walk in and say, oh my God, how horrible. This is such a tragedy. And everybody would remain quiet, and then as soon as the shooter left the room, they'd all start laughing. That was one of the things that led Pete to conclude that he had, quote-unquote, mud on his wheel of karma, that he wanted to come forward, he wanted to do right for humanity, and tell us what really had gone on and what he really learned. If you actually do an unbiased study of all the different insider testimonials, you will quickly see that this is not a lie. So when we have the authorized partial government disclosure going on through Tom DeLonge, through the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, in which they're focusing only on this 2004 USS Nimitz incident, where you have these tic-tac-looking UFOs that fly over the USS Nimitz. And we already know that during the initial launch, where they were trying to raise money, they had a picture of a helium balloon that was the #1 in a Mylar balloon that was made out of silver, and they portrayed that in their fundraiser as if it was a tic-tac UFO. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but it stands to reason that that could be construed as investment fraud, because they were portraying that as a picture of this UFO that they were talking about, and now you can't find the video anywhere. They scrubbed it off the internet. So they've already gotten caught in that, and they tried to raise a lot of money, but they only got $1,026,000. So when you have to put in your social security number and you have to do all this crazy stuff and submit to a background check just to invest $200 in this venture, people weren't too keen on that. So that's kind of like what we're seeing now is the restriction of free speech on the internet. We're seeing it like crazy. I wrote a whole book on this called D-Class, and I highly recommend going back and reading that. It's 6 sections long, 53,000 words, 180 pages. It is a book. That would be kind of a small book, but still, it's a book. So there's so much going on right now in which YouTube as a whole has been modified as a delivery system for mainstream media content, which I guess would be good for you if you wanted to have cable, because now you don't need to pay for cable. You can get it on YouTube for free, right? They're just pushing it on us now, but there's probably still reasons to have cable as well. You know, stuff you're not going to get on YouTube. But then that's the YouTube Premium, I guess, you know. So anyway, we are being attacked. We are being shadow banned. We are having all of our links banned. It's crazy how much big tech is attacking us. But don't let this fool you. It is happening because we are winning. It is happening because disclosure is happening. And it is happening because we are getting towards the victory. In other words, Pete said that unless our president gets impeached, within 6 months he could talk about everything he knows. No restrictions. That's 2020. So there's something that was going to go on between now and the end of the year that would make it just open season for insiders. And so we all have a role to play in that process. We, as intelligent citizens, are working together to have disclosure. We want the truth. And there are some mitigating circumstances around what happened to Pete Peterson that I do feel we should talk about. So let's do that for a second, because this is valuable information that I feel does need to be shared. And it's why I hiked up 10,000 feet, out to this wonderful location to give you this. So there's another insider that I've talked about before. His code name was Woody. I didn't use the code name, but now it doesn't matter because he's also dead. And so therefore there's no need to try to save him from being killed because he was killed, okay? Now, Woody was apparently the top person in the Western world with the Western governmental apparatus, okay, and whatever forms it is, both secret and overt, who was the signatory for any deals that were done with the real financial powers behind the Asians. This is the Dragon family. Okay, so had to stand up for a while because things are starting to get sore on that rock.